This week marks the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. That's a federal law that made discrimination against people with disabilities illegal. But as the pandemic enters its 5th month now, the disabled community is really struggling in many different ways. Joining us now via phone is Edward Matthews. He's the CEO of Adapt Community Network. Mr. Matthews, thanks for being here with us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's get right to it. When New York City was put on lockdown, many day programs that serve people with developmental disabilities were shut down. Give us an update on the situation.
Well, as you know, as you just mentioned, all of the day programs throughout New York State were closed in the abundance of caution and to prevent the spread of the pandemic. So that left 35 to 40,000 individuals with developmental disabilities sort of unhinged from their day-to-day activities. Some of who lived in supervised and supported settings, which are sponsored by the various agencies, still had in-house programming and staff and things to meet their needs. Those living at home were sort of left to fend for themselves. And while our staff, and while the state did a very good job in the beginning of providing needed relief in terms of funds, that now has dried up. So for a lot of folks living at home, even though we're trying to do the best we can with staff, we may not be able to continue to do that much longer. The state we're told by the federal government that federal funds that on this relief, which is similar to the PPP program for us, would stop July 21st, which they did, and the state was left with only its own funds or to try to scramble around, and so far no aid has been forthcoming. So all of the agencies throughout the state are struggling to figure out how they're going to handle this, how they're going to maintain the staff who work so hard in some of these programs and visiting people at home, as well as provide needed supports and services to people living at home until we can get back up and running again.
Right. Have there been any widespread layoffs for day programs as of yet?
Well, since the funding only stopped on Tuesday, last Tuesday, not that I've heard of, but as this thing continues, I think you're going to see anywhere over a couple of thousand people throughout the state be furloughed for a period of time.
Mr. Matthews, what are you most concerned about going forward as it relates to these day programs and people with developmental disabilities?
Well, Cheryl, the day programs also include needed physical, speech, occupational therapy, as well as the socialization for folks with developmental disabilities. And even though we've been trying to keep in contact with so many people and do so many things and provide some exercise groups of people over the phone and with parents and family members and caregivers at home can do, the needed therapies for people, we're afraid of a lot of regression for people, especially those with significant motor impairments and significant disabilities in both speech, OT, and PT, physical therapy and occupational therapy. So the biggest problem for us is trying to get those services to people while funding has been restricted or eliminated. We don't know how to do it.
Yeah. And what about children with special needs? What do you make of them returning to school in the fall? They're a very vulnerable group, and social distancing may be very difficult. What do you think about that?
Well, the Adapt Community Network has over 1,100 children in our early education programs, which serves children from birth through 5 years old. And, you know, you can imagine that it's going to be impossible for those kids to wear masks or do social distancing.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, we're trying to gear up, serve some of the children and rotate them through the school. We don't know if it's going to work. We don't know if transportation is going to be there because the Department of Ed Transportation Bureau has been completely silent about their ability to transport children. We doubt parents are going to put very many children on a bus. So the only ones we're going to see in school are those that parents can bring themselves and pick up. So we're taking this very, very slowly, but we see remote learning and virtual learning as part of the curriculum now, at least for the rest of this year, if not beyond. But I think it's going to be very difficult to get. There are 100,000 children with developmental disabilities in preschool and school-age programs, and it's going to be hard for me to understand how they're all going to get to school, even on a part-time basis. And families willing to put them on buses and see what happens. I think it's going to be very difficult to do.
Yeah, I think it will be very difficult. Well, we want to stay in touch with you on this as we head into August. There are going to be a lot of things to consider for children with special needs. Edward Matthews, CEO of Adapt Community Network, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you so much.